Welcome to A League of Our Own, smart talk for women by the women of WRHU Radio Hofstra University. I'm your host, Ava Della Pena. Today, I had the exciting opportunity to sit down with Mallorie Dunn, a professor at the Fashion Institute of Technology and Parsons, a fashion designer and business owner of Smart Glamour, a brand which not only offers inclusive clothing for plus-size people, but also prioritizes sustainability and fashion education. Today, we're discussing the ethics behind fast fashion, what it means for fashion to be ethically consumed and created, and the environmental impacts of overconsumption and overproduction.
My name is Mallorie Dunn, and I'm the owner and designer of a company called Smart Glamour. And I'm also a professor at both the Fashion Institute of Technology and the New School through Parsons Open Campus, teaching sewing, draping, small business, everything fashion design related.
Awesome. So I wanted to talk about like navigating fast fashion. So to you, what would you say constitutes fast fashion?
So that's actually a really interesting question because I feel like when fast fashion, like the concept of it was first brought into people's minds, I think people had actually like a clearer idea of it. And I feel like recently, folks have gotten it confused. The more that people are concerned with ethical versus unethical fashion, as far as like the production and how workers are treated, um, I think the more people think that anything that's unethical is fast fashion, which actually isn't the truth because the key word to fast fashion is that it is fast. Fast fashion is to increase profit as high as a company can by cutting down the production time. So releasing as many collections as you can very quickly, catching on trends and getting them out to customers immediately, and most often also producing way more than you should.
Yeah, I'm glad that you kind of pointed out that difference, especially because right now I feel like it's really hard to navigate when something is fast fashion. I feel like generally the public understands fast fashion as something that's at this super low price point, when that's
Right.
actually not true, right? Like if you think about Zara or Urban Outfitters, I mean, those aren't inexpensive brands, but they're absolutely fast fashion, right?
I mean, Zara especially is a huge fast fashion company, and it's been a very long time since I stepped into a Zara, so I'm not sure what their prices are currently, but I know, I mean, their prices are nowhere near like a Forever 21, which those are all fast fashion as well. But yes, it doesn't just mean that the clothes are cheap, right? Because there's inexpensive, unethical clothing made for Target, Walmart, Kmart, Ross, Burlington, JCPenney, etc. But none of those companies are fast fashion because they are doing the standard production turnaround time that mass manufactured corporate clothing follows. But fast fashion is specifically and purposely created to shorten that time and make as many collections as possible, like how for years we've all heard that H&M releases 52 collections a year. That kind of concept. Fashion Nova uploads 1,000 new styles a day, like that. That is ultra fast fashion.
Absolutely. So, how can people identify what fast fashion is?
Well, I think in general, even if it's not just for fast fashion, but also unethical produced fashion in general, you just need to do some research and look into these companies. Um, because companies that are ethically produced and that are sustainable, etc., are going to be talking about that, right? They're going to be having whole pages on their websites about their sustainability goals, whatnot. But companies that produce unethically are not going to be doing those things. And then when it comes to specifically fast fashion, just pay attention to how many items these companies are cranking out and uploading and promoting. I think when a company like Shein or Fashion Nova releases and adds so many new styles a day, there's kind of like going to be possible for them to create all of those new styles if they weren't doing it in such a fast way.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about the role that we play in it because, of course, like the these companies are the ones producing fashion and actually, having such a fast turnaround. But I mean, we contribute to it in our own way through like this trend of overconsumption that I feel is very, very popular right now.
Hmm. I mean, it's definitely overconsumption in the fashion industry has only progressively gotten worse. Um, there's tons and tons of stats that you can find on this topic, but I know that even from like the 90s and then to the mid 2010s had cut their like the length of that they would wear something, the length that they would keep something and like keep it in rotation in their closet by half, right? So that was already like over 10 years ago that was true. And it's only sped up from there because 10 years ago there was no Shein and Fashion Nova, etc. There was H&M and Zara, excuse me, and Forever 21, but the like ultra fast fashion of it didn't even exist yet. So it is kind of like a circular problem from company to consumer and then back again. However, because what happened for the over the past 30 years is that the quicker and the cheaper that fashion becomes, the easier it is for us to buy. Like when we see stores like H&M releasing a collection every week, that instinctually tells us that like we need new things, like must get new things, right? And the more that we feel we must get new things, the more we feel our old things are no longer important or valid. And the cheaper clothes are, the more people treat them as disposable, right? If you're not actually investing a bit of money, whatever that bit of money means to you, proportionally to like what you have to spend, it's much easier to just buy something, wear it to one event once, and then like throw it into your closet, forget you have it, then you're moving or you're cleaning and you're like, oh yeah, this thing, I don't even like this thing anymore, and you throw it out. And we've just kind of accepted that clothes are meant to be treated that way. And so it just kind of perpetuates it, which then feeds back into the companies because we're purchasing from them. And so then they just keep cranking the dial up and it just kind of circles around.
Yeah, and I feel like especially now things go out of style so quickly because like you said, like we look at a piece of clothing that we have in our closet when we're cleaning it out and we say like, "Oh, I don't even like that anymore." But we don't like it anymore after a month or 2 months, right? So like these trend cycles, they're just so fast now. You hear the term out of season. I think that's almost a dated term,
Mhm.
like because fashion isn't even trending by a seasonal basis. It's
Mhm.
weeks to months now. So how do you think that overconsumption kind of affects trend cycles?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. Something that we actually talk about and is how fashion has really changed because just like the fashion overall, because when we think back to the mid 1900s and then maybe like 60s, 70s, 80s, a little bit creeping into the 90s, it was really like high-end designers who dictated like what the trends were going to be. So the way that the fashion system works or worked before was that everything kind of trickled down. So very high-end designers would decide what they were going to do in a collection. And honestly, I don't know if you're familiar with this concept, but a lot of high-end designers do what's called forecasting. So they will hire forecasting firms who their whole job is researching both the past and the cycle of trends and the turnaround time of trends. And nowadays they also research like street style and the internet, all this stuff, and they compile it all together into these reports. And high-end companies then use those reports to kind of dial in on silhouettes and colors, textures that they're going to feature. Then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because the designers do it, which then makes it a trend, which then makes it true, like it makes the forecast correct. And then it trickles down. So I remember even when I was in college 20 years ago, you would see something from the runway, and then eventually it would trickle down. And then like 6 months to a year from then, Forever 21 would have the exact same thing. So like people would just be copying and diluting the garment by making it in cheaper fabrics, removing design details, removing seams, etc. But it was this very like top down motion of what is in style, quote unquote. And that's why it always used to seem that if you bought your clothes from somewhere very inexpensive, you would look like you were out of date. It was truly because it took that long for the trend to get to you. But in the past 20 years, and especially in the past like 10, 15 years, with social media becoming a thing, trends just, they don't have to come from the top down. Trends can happen by, you know, something going viral on TikTok. And now all of a sudden, everyone cares about that thing, whether it's like when everyone was freaking out about those big boots that like kind of look like cartoon boots, right? Like that didn't come from the top down, that like came from the internet. So the cycle of how things become a trend and become interesting to people has changed. Celebrities make things popular now, like certain specific influencers make things popular now. And with the advent of fast fashion, these companies can watch that happen, and then just as fast as it came in, the next thing is popping up, and we've forgotten about the first thing, and everyone, you know, and the cycle continues.
Yeah, I mean, for you, like, what would you say our responsibility is as a consumer to, I understand that not everyone has access to ethical fashion, but even like the average consumer, like, what can we do to ensure that we're not participating in unethically and unsustainably made fashion?
Right. So the number one thing that we can do is simply to buy less. Even if you may not have access to 100% ethical, sustainable fashion made with organic fabrics and all that wonderful stuff, you can take care of the things that you buy. You cannot treat them as disposable. You can learn how to do some small mending. So if you get a hole in something, or if it doesn't fit you quite right, you can fix it. If something really doesn't fit you quite right, but if it did, you would love it, you know, spend the extra little bit of money to bring it somewhere to get it tailored so that you'll keep it longer. Like basically the key to it is just increasing the lifespan of your clothes. And then, yes, if you do have access, whether it is monetary or it is you fit into the size range that is being offered, obviously spending your money with companies who care about their workers, who care about their planet, who produce in small batches, who use dead stock fabric, all of those things are an incredible, lovely thing to do. But at the end of the day, we need to be buying less, and we need to be keeping our clothes for longer.
If you're just tuning in to 88.7 FM WRHU, this is A League of Our Own. I'm your host, Ava de la Pena, and I'm sitting down with Mallorie Dunn, a fashion designer, professor, and business owner.
Throughout the year, if you were to look at all of the purchases they made, making really cheap, like singular purchases, if you add it all up, with that money, you could be investing into one blouse or like one pair of jeans that you could really get a lot of use out of over several years, instead of just buying a bunch of little things that you're not going to wear in even 6 months.
Exactly. I mean, they're kind of like updating those studies all the time on what people, how much people are spending dollars a year on clothes, and you truly don't need to. And it's interesting because as somebody who, you know, is a fashion designer and loves clothes, and I love to have fun with clothes, I'm not saying that like you need to completely stop shopping, or you need to buy like completely boring clothes, or even that you have to have a capsule wardrobe, like, you know, paring your wardrobe down to just a few things. I don't think you need to do that. I think we just have to be what we're buying and why, and like how many ways can I use this item? Can I mix it not just with one pair of pants, but can I also wear it with a skirt? Can I also put a layer over it and wear it when it's cold? I think also kind of reframing our idea of like when to wear things that feel special. I think a lot of times people will buy a special garment for their birthday or for to go to somebody's wedding, or because it's a trendy piece that they really like other times that you can wear them, so that that's not just I bought a thing, I wore it once, now it's languishing in the back of my closet.
Yeah. So kind of to shift it a little bit, I mean, the elephant in the room, how does fast fashion affect the environment?
In so many ways. I mean, one of the biggest things that bothers me the most with fast fashion is truly the overproduction, right? We are making way too much clothing. And globally, we're making 150 billion garments a year. And then annually, globally, a third of those garments are getting thrown out within the first year that they've been made. So whether that's somebody is bought it and they're just like immediately discarding it, or it never gets sold, which a large percent of clothes are never getting sold. Then it becomes, what do we do with these clothes? And we're talking like at a mass scale. I'm not even talking about the individual consumer who's trying to clean out their closet. I'm talking about we've overproduced a whole 50 billion garments. Where do they go? And the answer is, unfortunately, that a lot of it, for one, gets burned, which obviously is not good for the environment. And then the other option is that they get shipped to landfills, often in countries, and we've completely wrecked, entire economies of various countries, specifically like in Africa, because we just keep shipping them all of our clothes. And it's just piled up and piled up. And I think another thing, especially because there's this whole conversation around like global north versus global south when we're talking about the fashion industry and ethics and pollution and sustainability, because the global north, quote unquote, which is mostly, like Europe, the Americas, etc., we're the people buying most of the clothes. However, we're, for the most part, not the people making the clothes. The clothes are made in India, in Pakistan, in China, etc. And so we are the people consuming it, but we're not really yet, but again, eventually we all will, feeling the direct environmental impact of both being the place that makes all the clothes, because dye is getting into the water, all of that, and then being the place where the clothes go to either get incinerated or to just stack up and live forever.
Yeah, and I feel like it's the same. I mean, going back, we kind of have the privilege of not having to think about the consequences of our actions, but it's like so many other environmental issues where the people who contribute to it most and the people who can afford to kind of turn a blind eye to it are not the people that are going to be the most affected by it. It's those that are directly affected to it. They don't have the privilege of turning a blind eye to it. So, I mean, what are some alternatives to shopping fast fashion, and honestly some alternatives into production as well?
Well, my number one suggestion as alternative production is actually not even a like where or how conversation. It's actually the intersection of sustainability and overproduction with fat phobia, because the majority of people, especially when we're talking about the global north, are plus size. And yet the majority of companies are producing only straight sizes. And I've actually done a whole hour-long talk on this topic specifically during FIT Sustainability Week.
Here's a clip of that presentation, courtesy of FIT.
30% of clothes that are made every year are never even sold. They just get discarded. Second thing is that because of that, but also because of just the waste that fashion creates, 92 million tons of textile waste are created every year. 60% of brands admit that overproduction is a huge or significant issue to them. And then tying in with kind of this first stat, we make 150 billion garments a year worldwide. Which, yes, I know. Which then means 50 billion of those garments are disposed of within the first year that they're made. So a third of them just get sold out, thrown out, whether they are purchased and thrown out or just thrown out because no one bought them. And lastly, 87% of materials used to make clothing end up at landfills annually.
The full 1-hour presentation is available online under the title Mallorie Dunn, FITSAW 2023, Intersectional Sustainability for more information.
As I was mentioning before, that a whole third of garments are being destroyed within the first year they're made. Well, we also are producing, like, majority of our garments, like 80% of garments are produced for straight size people, when straight size people are only 30% of the population. So if we actually just shifted the sizes that we made, we would throw out way less clothing. And, you know, obviously, I'm not suggesting that we go on continuing to produce 150 billion garments a year, because we certainly don't need to, and we shouldn't. But if we did, and all we did was just actually shift the sizing, that would go a long way to solving this overproduction crisis.
Yeah, that is some great insight. Where can our listeners find you to learn a little bit more about fashion?
Sure. So you can find me all over the internet at Smart Glamour. On Instagram, it's smart__ glamour. On TikTok, it's just Smart Glamour. But you can also just, you know, Google Mallorie Dunn in connection with the Fashion Institute or connection with Parsons. Most of the classes that I teach at the Fashion Institute are continuing education, so anyone can take them. They're not undergrad classes where you have to be like going to the college. So if it's even just something that you're slightly interested in and you don't want a whole commitment, you're not trying to change your career or anything, you can still take classes and learn from me. But also I put out educational and fashion related content online as well.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you cutting out your day for us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Once again, I'm Ava Della Pena, and that was Mallorie Dunn, a fashion professor at FIT and Parsons, as well as the fashion designer and business owner behind the brand Smart Glamour. That was A League of Our Own, only on 88.7 FM WRHU, Radio Hofstra University.